From the Disney Scary Storybook Collection, this is Walt Disney's Peter Pan and Captain Hook's Shadow. "Walk the plank, Peter Pan!" John Darling cried as he waved his wooden sword at his brother Michael. The two boys were playing in the nursery. John was pretending to be Captain Hook, and Michael was pretending to be Peter Pan. "I won't walk the plank," Michael said, "and you're a codfish, Captain Hook." "I'll get you for that, Pan," John cried, imitating Captain Hook's evil sneer. Michael leaped off the bed, wooden sword drawn. Clack, clack! The brothers chased each other around the nursery in an exciting sword fight. For a moment, Michael felt just as he had when he was a lost boy in Neverland. "All right, John and Michael, time for bed," Wendy said as she walked into the room. "Just a few more minutes," Michael begged. "Captain Hook is about to make me walk the plank." "You'll have plenty of time to walk the plank tomorrow," Wendy said. "Now it's time to sleep." "Just a few more minutes," John pleaded. "All right," Wendy agreed. "I'll be right back." Then she left. John bounced off the bed, and he and Michael began another pretend battle. The minutes passed quickly, and soon Wendy returned. "Now it's really time to go to sleep," she told her brothers. Michael and John put down their swords and dutifully crawled into their beds. Wendy turned out the light and got into bed too. She was still sleeping in the nursery while her new bedroom was being decorated. Michael pulled the covers up to his chin and snuggled against his teddy bear. He was comfortable, but he wasn't tired. Soon, Michael could tell by the gentle breathing sounds that John and Wendy were asleep. Michael squeezed his eyes shut, but it was no use. He kept picturing Captain Hook trying to capture Peter Pan, and the surprised look on the pirate's face when Pan got away. Suddenly, there was a rattling sound, then a whoosh. Michael opened his eyes and saw that the nursery windows were wide open. Had someone gotten inside? That's when Michael noticed a shadow against the far wall. He gasped, and his eyes widened in fright. The shadow was shaped just like Captain Hook. Could it be him? Michael wished he could run. Since he couldn't, he'd have to hide. Quickly, Michael dove under the covers, shaking. Captain Hook was so scary, but being under the covers didn't make Michael feel any better. He wanted to know for certain whether or not the pirate was in the nursery. Slowly, he lifted the bottom edge of his blanket and peeked out. Michael still couldn't see Hook, but the captain's shadow was right there against the wall, large as life. The shadow seemed to look around the nursery for a moment. Then it began to creep toward the far corner. A chill ran down Michael's spine. Captain Hook was headed toward Wendy. Michael knew he had to protect his sister. He glanced around the nursery, and his eye fell on something lying beside his bed, right beneath his hand. It was his wooden sword. Michael reached down and wrapped his fingers around the sword just as the shadow got to Wendy. He threw off his covers and leaped toward it. The shadow stumbled backward. Michael lunged at it again, but it swiped at him with its hook. Michael dove under the bed. The shadow reached for him, but he scooted away just in time. Then the shadow jumped onto the bed, and Michael gulped, waiting for the hook to swipe at him again. He began to wonder why he was only seeing Captain Hook's shadow. Where can Hook be hiding? He asked himself. Michael realized he couldn't stay under the bed. Captain Hook was sure to get him sooner or later. Michael darted into the middle of the room, but the shadow came after him. Then Michael stumbled backward and tripped over a ball that had been lying on the floor. The shadow skulked toward him. Now Captain Hook has got me for sure, Michael thought. Shivering, he pictured the crocodile that waited for anyone who walked the plank on Hook's ship. "Cock-a-doodle-doo!" a voice cried suddenly. "Peter Pan!" Michael shouted as his hero flew in through the window. "I'm so glad you're here. Captain Hook tried to get Wendy, but I stopped him." "Hook is here?" Peter asked. He narrowed his eyes and looked around. "There he is," he exclaimed. "Why, it's Captain Hook's shadow," Peter said. "Don't let it get away." The shadow tried to run, but Peter flew after it. "It's only a shadow?" Michael asked. Suddenly he wasn't so scared. He leaped up from the floor and ran after it too. The shadow moved toward the wooden toy chest. "Grab it from the other side," Peter called. Michael ran toward the shadow from the right as Peter flew at it from the left. The shadow was trapped. In a flash, Michael reached out and caught it. "Put it in here," Peter cried, holding out a sack. Michael stuffed the shadow into the sack, and Peter tied it closed with a piece of rope. "Phew," Peter said, "that was close." "Why do you think Captain Hook's shadow was here?" Michael asked. "I stole the shadow for a prank," Peter explained. "Some prank? That shadow has been nothing but trouble, pulling the lost boys' tails and putting pine cones in their beds. And then it sneaked away from Neverland." "How awful!" Michael cried. Peter nodded. "I'd better fly back to Neverland and return it right away, while everyone aboard Captain Hook's ship is still asleep." "Good idea," Michael said. "Do you want to come with me?" Peter asked. "It'll be a great adventure." "I don't think I'd want to go without Wendy and John," Michael replied. "Then let's bring them," Peter said as he flew over to Wendy's bed. He reached down to give her a gentle shake, but then drew his hand back. She's fast asleep," he said. Peter looked over at John and said, "John's asleep too." "Maybe next time," Michael said. "Next time," Peter echoed, jumping on the window ledge. "Goodbye, Michael. Tell Wendy and John I said hello," he called. Then he flew off into the night. "I will," Michael promised. He waved and went back to bed, smiling. He was glad to have had another adventure with Peter Pan.